All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Bible Tales. Seriously? Andrew, stop it. We're going through the Bible chronologically, and today we've come to Matthew 27 and Mark 15. Jesus is going to be delivered to Pilate. Judas is going to hang himself.
What?
And we're going to read through that.
Wait,
And actually, the crucifixion as well.
Wait, what chapter?
Yep.
What chapter is?
Matthew 27, Mark 15. The mock trial and the crucifixion. Yep. Dear God, thank you for your word. Thank you that we can look to it, Lord. Thank you that we have the opportunity to do this, and that we live in a country that allows us to have religious freedom, Lord. We thank you for that. We bless you for it, Lord. And we ask that you would open our eyes and ears to your word today, Lord, that we get through, and bless others that are watching this as well. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. What's going on over there? Okay. All right. Andrew, would you like to read 27?
Sure. Jesus delivered to Pilate. You're so mean. And you're mean too. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate the governor.
27:2 delivered him over to Pilate. Jesus had two trials, one Jewish and religious, the other Roman and secular. Rome reserved the right of execution in capital cases, so Jesus had to be handed over to the Roman authorities for execution of the death sentence. Pilate's headquarters were in Caesarea on the Mediterranean coast, but he was in Jerusalem for the Passover celebrations, so he foresaw the trial. Christ was brought before Pilate, then was sent to Herod for yet another hearing, then returned to Pilate for the final hearing and pronouncing of sentence.
All right, Judas hangs himself. Then when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." They said, "What is that to us? See to it yourself." And throwing down the pieces of silver into the temple, he departed, and he went and hanged himself. But the chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said, "It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, since it is blood money."
You think?
So they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field as a burial for strangers. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, "And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him on whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for the potter's field as the Lord directed me."
Okay, 27:9, spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. Actually, the statement paraphrases Zechariah 11:12 through 13, but the Hebrew canon was divided into three sections: law, writings, and prophets. Jeremiah came first in the order of prophetic books, so the prophets were sometimes collectively referred to by his name. Okay, Jesus before Pilate.
I want to read.
Oh, well, keep reading it.
All right, Jesus before Pilate. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You have said so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?" But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed.
The crowd chooses Barabbas. Now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd one prisoner whom they wanted, and they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" For he knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus who is called Christ?" They all said, "Let him be crucified." And he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." Pilate delivers Jesus to be crucified. So when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." And check this out. And all the people answered, "His blood be on us and our children." Then he released for them Barabbas, having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. 27:26, scourged. The whip used for scourging consisted of several strands of leather attached to a wooden handle. Each strand had a bit of metal or bone attached to the end. The victim was bound to a post by the wrists, high over his head, so that the flesh of the back would be taut. An expert at wielding the scourge could literally tear the flesh from the back, lacerating muscles and sometimes even exposing the kidneys or other internal organs. Scourging alone was fatal in some cases. Jesus is mocked. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they stripped him. Wait, what? Oh, and they gathered the whole battalion before him, and they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and put a reed in his right hand, and kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spit on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him and led him away to crucify him. 27:21, to crucify him. Crucifixion was a form of punishment that had been passed down to the Romans from the Persians, Phoenicians, and Carthaginians. Roman crucifixion was a lingering doom by design. Roman executioners had perfected the art of slow torture while keeping the victim alive. Some victims even lingered until they were eaten alive by birds of prey or wild beasts. Most hung on the cross for days before dying of exhaustion, dehydration, traumatic fever, or most likely suffocation. When the legs would no longer support the weight of the body, the diaphragm was constricted in a way that made breathing impossible. That is why breaking the legs would hasten death. But this was unnecessary in Jesus' case. The hands were usually nailed through the wrists, and the feet through the instep of the Achilles tendon, sometimes using one nail for both feet. None of these wounds would be fatal, but their pain would become unbearable as the hours dragged on. The most notable feature of crucifixion was the stigma of disgrace that was attached to it. Stigma. One indignity was the humiliation of carrying one's own cross, which might weigh as much as 200 pounds. Normally, a quaternion, 4 soldiers would escort the prisoner through the crowds to the place of crucifixion. A placard bearing the indictment would be hung around the person's neck. All right. You want to read the next section?
No, I'm going to read the death of Jesus.
The crucifixion. As they went out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. 27:34, wine mixed with gall. Gall simply refers to something bitter. Mark 15:23 identifies it as myrrh, a narcotic. The Jews had a custom based on Proverbs 31:6 of administering a pain-deadening medication mixed with wine to victims of crucifixion in order to deaden the pain. Tasting what it was, Christ, though thirsty, would not drink. Let it dull his senses before he completed his work. The lessening of physical pain would probably not have diminished the efficacy of his atoning work, but he needed his full mental faculties for the hours yet to come. It was necessary for him to be awake and fully conscious, for example, to minister to the dying thief. And when they had crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watch over him there. And over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." The two robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." So also the chief priests with the scribes and elders mocked him, saying, "He saved others, but he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now if he desires him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. All right, Andrew.
The death of Jesus. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani."
Sabachthani.
Sabachthani?
I think it's sabachthani.
Sabachthani.
Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani.
What that is, my God, why have you forsaken me?"
Okay, let me read this real quick. Sorry. 2746. This is by Alexander Metherell. Metherell? I don't know. "The pain was absolutely unbearable. In fact, it was literally beyond words to describe. They had to invent a new word. Excruciating. Literally, excruciating means out of the cross."
Okay, 47. And some of the bystanders hearing it said, "This man is Elijah." And one of them...
This man is calling Elijah.
Oh, this man is calling Elijah. And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom, and the earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened.
Oh. Go ahead.
And many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. What does that mean?
Dead believers were resurrected when this happened.
Wait, what?
Okay. 2746. Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. Eli is Hebrew, the rest Aramaic. Mark 15:34 gives the entire wail in Aramaic. This cry is a fulfillment of Psalm 22:1, one of many striking parallels between that psalm and the specific events of the crucifixion. Christ at that moment was experiencing the abandonment and despair that resulted from the outpouring of divine wrath on him as sin bearer. Okay, 2752, here's your answer, Andrew. Bodies of the saints were raised. Matthew alone mentions this miracle. Nothing more is said about these people, which would be unlikely if they remained on earth for long. Evidently, these people were given glorified bodies. They appeared to many, enough to establish the reality of the miracle, and then they no doubt ascended to glory, a kind of foretaste of 1 Thessalonians 4:16. All right, Andrew, 54.
Yes. When the centurion?
I think it's centurion. Or centurion. Keep reading.
I lost my spot.
When the centurion, 54.
Oh yeah, when the centurion and those who were with him took place, as they were
keeping watch
over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." There were also many women there looking on from a distance, who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Joseph, the mother of James, and Joseph and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. Jesus is buried. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him, and Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen shroud and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb.
The guard at the tomb, the next day, that is, after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, we remembered how that impostor said while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise.' Therefore, order the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples go and steal him away and tell the people he has risen from the dead, and the last fraud will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard of soldiers. Go make it as secure as you can." So they went and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone and setting a guard. Okay? All right, 15.
Oh my gosh, boy.
It'll go away in a second.
What smell you smell?
15.
The burnt smell.
Okay, Jesus delivered to Pilate. As soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders. No more. Okay, no more. And scribes and the whole council, and they bound Jesus and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate. And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so." And the chief priests accused him of many things. And Pilate again asked him, "Have you no answer to make? See how many charges they bring against you." But Jesus made no further answer, so that Pilate was amazed. Pilate delivers Jesus to be crucified. Now at the feast he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked. And among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do what he usually did for them. And he answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. 15:10, out of envy. Pilate realized that the Jewish authorities had not handed Jesus over to him out of loyalty to Rome. He saw through their deceit to the underlying reason: their jealousy over Jesus' popularity with the people. But the chief priests, verse 11, stirred up the crowd to have him release for them Barabbas instead. And Pilate again said to them, "Then what shall I do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" And they cried out again, "Crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified.
Oh, shoot. Again. Jesus is mocked, and the soldiers led him away inside the palace, that is the governor's headquarters, and they called together the whole battalion. And they clothed him in a purple cloak, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on him. And they began to salute him, "Hail the King of the Jews." And they were striking his head with a reed, and spitting on him, and kneeling down in homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the purple cloak and put his own clothes on him. And they led him out to crucify him. The Crucifixion. And they compelled a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross. And they brought him to the place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull. And they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him and divided his garments among them, casting lots for them, to decide what each should take. And it was the 3rd hour when they crucified him. And the inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews."
Okay. Inscription of the charge, 15:26. The crime for which a condemned man was executed was written on a wooden board which was fastened to the cross above the head. Jesus' inscription was written in Latin, Hebrew, and Greek. The King of the Jews. Since Pilate had repeatedly declared Jesus to be innocent of any crime, he ordered this inscription written for him. While Pilate's intent was probably neither to mock nor to honor Jesus, he certainly intended it as an affront to the Jewish authorities who had given him so much trouble. When the outraged Jewish leaders demanded the wording be changed, Pilate bluntly refused. A comparison of all four gospel accounts reveals that the full inscription read, "This is Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Thank you, Andrew. 27.
And with him they crucified two robbers, one on his right and one on his left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, "Aha, aha! You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross." So also the chief priests and the scribes mocked him to one another, saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down now from the cross, that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with him also reviled him.
The death of Jesus. And when the 6th hour had come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And one of the bystanders hearing it said, "Behold, he is calling Elijah." And someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, let us find out whether Elijah will come to take him down." And Jesus uttered a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The curtain of the temple was torn in two, the massive curtain separating the most holy place from the rest of the sanctuary. This rending signified that the way into God's presence was opened by the death of his son. And when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." 1539, centurion. The Roman officer in charge of the crucifixion. Centurions, considered the backbone of the Roman army, commanded 100 soldiers, saw that in this way he breathed his last. The centurion had seen many crucified victims die, but none like Jesus. The strength he possessed at his death, as evidenced by his loud cry, was unheard of for a victim of crucifixion. That, coupled with the earthquake that coincided with Christ's death, convinced the centurion that Jesus was the Son of God. According to tradition, this man actually became a believer. 40. There were also women looking on from a distance, among whom were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph and Salome. When he was in Galilee, they followed him and ministered to him. And there were also many other women who came up with him to Jerusalem. Okay.
Jesus is buried. And when evening had come, since it was the day of preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was also himself looking for the kingdom of God, took courage and went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate was surprised to hear that he should have already died.
No. Alex.
Summoning
No.
the centurion,
Centurion.
You said it was centurion already.
Centurion.
He asked him whether he was already dead.
Okay.
And when he
44. Pilate was surprised. Victims of crucifixion often lingered for days, hence Pilate's surprise that Jesus was dead after only 6 hours. Before granting Jesus' body to Joseph, Pilate checked with the centurion in charge of the crucifixion to verify that Jesus was really dead.
45. And when he learned that he was dead, he granted the corpse to Joseph. And Joseph brought a linen shroud.
Okay. 1545. He granted the corpse to Joseph. Having received confirmation from the centurion that Jesus was dead, Pilate granted Jesus' body to Joseph. By that act, the Roman officially pronounced Jesus dead. 46.
46, I know. And Joseph brought a linen shroud, and taking him down, wrapped him in the linen shroud and laid him in a tomb that had been cut out of the rock. And he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joses. Joses?
Yeah.
Who the heck is Joses? Joses.
Who is Joseph? I don't know. She's another Mary.
You can say another Mary.
What the heck? Who the heck is Joses?
She's another Mary.
Alright.
It was right here. Mary. Oh, she's the mother of James the Younger and of Joseph, and Salome. So she's the mother of James the Younger.
Oh. I thought it was just like something wrong with the Bible instead of Jesus. Saul.
Look at Mary, the mother of James the Younger and of Joseph. She is distinguished from the other Marys by the names of her sons. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay. 47. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where he was laid.
Joseph
Same thing. Okay, that's it.
saw where he was laid. We're going to do another one. We're on a roll. All right. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. God bless.